works in advance, and it's had, the few that I've received those from, it seems to work very well.
Yeah.
So, and then it also speeds up that internal process once you've submitted that paper copy for signatures. If I've seen it, you know, I could go through and it's a lot faster for me to say, okay, this is, you know, what I've seen before, and just verify that that information is still correct.
And if I can mention Haluk, who's very new to the university, but have already jumped in and written quite a few grants, but he did something that has absolutely never happened in the 5 years I've been here. He sent around you sent your budget was approved, he sent his paper copy around, and it went through within a day or two, and it was sitting on my desk a week before the due date, so he had time to actually work on his electronic application and get it to me. It was actually submitted 2 or 3 days before the due date. It's absolutely never happened, and he's one of our newer faculty members, so he's my shining star.
Something to keep in mind about this budget sheet. This is an internal budget sheet, and it probably will not exactly match the budget you submit in your grant, because some of the definitions in these categories may be different from different agencies. What one agency calls equipment is not the same thing that Lincoln University calls equipment. So you may have to juggle some of your line items in your budget to fit them into these categories. That's just the way it is. I guess. And then this is also internally where the matching is indicated as to how much, what kind of matching, and where it's going to come from. And then followed by signatures, lots of signatures. So then in some cases, the university provision for grant incentive program is appropriate for certain projects under certain conditions that involve personnel time. And I think the form itself is fairly straightforward. And this is something that's very individual to each project. And you have to very carefully read through the description, make sure it fits, fill out the form, and this is submitted with the internal routing form. So.
I know this probably isn't the right time to talk about it, but I know I've been in other meetings where we've talked about this. Is there any way we can change that form to not say incentive?
This is not, this is actually not my form.
I
It's
know,
on here. It's not my form. Can you pull it back up?
I think Tarun.
But yeah, if you,
It would make me a lot more comfortable.
we can definitely do that. We have this discussion, and I think everyone was in agreement that this is not my form. As you can see, I do not have to sign off on this. So, but we can change that. I don't know if we ever came up with a word, but we can definitely do that. It makes people very uncomfortable with that word incentive.
Right, but that's currently what's posted, that's the way it's phrased in the.
And I also when these fillables were done,
Sign is what we were,
And these are all internal documents. These never leave campus.
these should never leave campus.
But auditors come to campus too. I just think it could be cleaned up a little.
Yeah. Email me a suggestion.
Okay, then there's some, these 4 things, then kind of the end of the prepared slides. The top request for reassigned time, we talked about that a little bit with the proposal idea form. This is something that is specifically spelled out in the grant policy, that this is something that's negotiated with your supervisors relative to your other obligations that you have. It's approved by the signatures then on the proposal idea form. And that's something that has to be, it's not just an automatic approval because you want to take some time off to work on something else. It does have to be arranged and administratively approved. Salary adjustment, then the grant incentive form that we just talked about. That goes through with the internal routing form with its own set of signatures. And if you submit that, then include that in your budget calculations for personnel in your submitted budgets. And make sure that it's in there, because the incentive form will not be signed if you haven't allowed for that in your calculated budget. And then if for some reason that it's not approved, then I assume you get your budget back with a request to refigure personnel costs. F&A costs, in almost every program, there's some provision for F&A costs. There will certainly be a statement about it. The university has negotiated rate of personnel costs on campus of 58%, personnel off campus was 26%. However, not everything fits into that negotiated rate. The RFP itself may give limitations, different calculation methods. It's possible that they do not allow for it, and it will say so. And if that's the case, when you're submitting your documentation, it may smooth things along if you include a memo quoting that section of the RFP that says no F&A costs are allowed. Then you don't get a call from 3 or 4 people saying, why didn't you include F&A costs?
I'm the one that
Because
calls.
they know. Because they know.
Why are
Exactly.
you using this rate? Why
Right.
isn't there any, if there's a notation somewhere that allows me to say, okay, because when I review the budget, I don't get a copy of the RFP, so I don't know what the limitations are listed. So if there's even just a little short and sweet sentence that says F&A costs are limited to X percentage per RFP, that is just a key to me to say, okay, this is why they're using this number.
And it may say from personal experience, it's 8% of total direct costs is the maximum allowed. In which case, this has nothing really to do with the calculation. You also want to check and see if the F&A costs are calculated within the maximum budget, or are they allowed in addition to the maximum budget? If you have a lot of personnel time and you're calculating 58%, it can eat up a big chunk of a $500,000 budget. Any internal waivers, if you voluntarily are foregoing F&A costs, need to be pre-approved in writing from Dr. Mahoney, probably, from Dr. Mahoney.
It has to be approved by Dr. Mahoney. Also, Sandy is involved in that as well.
And you're going to need a significant justification for voluntarily waiving money that would be coming to the university in F&A costs.
Reduce it and waive it.
Well, well, neither. From the university standpoint, neither.
You said you may have a funding agency that has a cap, like 8% of total direct costs. Can we use that figure? Because isn't our contracted agreement based on personnel only and not on total costs? But if it's capped at 8, can we automatically use that rate of 8?
You have to.
You have to.
I have to.
You have
Okay.
to.
Yeah, because
Okay.
if you're going,
But I mean, it doesn't have to be 8% of personnel. I can do 8% of my total cost.
if the
If
RFP
that's what
states
it's
that
saying.
you are allowed maximum of 8% of total direct, if that is less than our negotiated rate of 58%, then
Okay.
you use the 8%. If for some reason our 58% would be less than that 8% of total, then you would use the 58%.
Okay.
It can't exceed more than that 8% of total direct cost.
Okay. So technically, we're still charging it based on 58% personnel. We just have to cap it.
No.
It doesn't matter. I understand.
Yeah. Just as long as you don't
The
exceed
RFP may
it.
tell you how to calculate it
Mhm.
specifically and differently than this. And many of them do.
Mhm.
Then, if you are funded, so we're now a year or two down the road, my understanding